What's going on, you guys? I am Paluki, your coach of the Chicago Chimecos. Welcome to the channel, and welcome to the very first season of the Pokemon Knockout Draft, the PKD. It's a draft league format that I and my friend Clutch have created ourselves. We are very excited to get this first season kicked off. And for you today, you guys, I have a draft analysis. We did our draft pretty late last night. It was live stream on Twitch, but if you didn't catch it there, I'm going to do a little analysis for you here so you can get a sense of the teams that we drafted. Now remember, the PKD is a draft league system in which there are only two coaches, and the winner each week gets to knock out a Pokemon on the opposing party or the losing party's roster. There's some protections instituted called shield tags. If you don't know the rules, if you're not familiar with it, there is a rules video. I will post it in the description of this video. It's on our YouTube channel. It's also on my Twitch page. So without further ado, let's jump right into the analysis. So Clutch actually had the first pick in the draft, but I'm going to go over my picks first, and I'm also not going to go in choice order. Generally, Clutch and I both kind of stayed in a pretty similar pattern. So we both pretty much picked our OUs, then our UUs, then our RUs, and then our Megas were sort of peppered in there. But I'll give you a sense of where I picked certain things if I thought they were early value picks or if I dipped into RU a little early. But I'm going to start with my picks. I had the second pick in the draft, and for my first pick, I took Magearna. So I have Magearna in a real draft league right now called the PCL. In fact, Clutch and I are facing each other in the final very soon. And I love Magearna, man. It can run so many different sets. Fairy and Steel type. It's only weak to fire and ground. It's a slow Volt switcher. Flare Cannon hits like a truck. It's a great Z user, and in this format, anything with a shield tag can be used with any Z crystal. It's basically a Z captain. So we got Fairy Z, we've got Electrium Z, we've got Fightinium Z. I've seen Steelium Z. I mean, there's a lot of different options. You can run Trick Room if you want. You can run Shift Gear, Calm Mind. There's so many different options with Magearna. And most importantly for me, Magearna is very easy to synergize with only two weaknesses and a lot of setup potential. If you get rid of ground and fire types, you're pretty much just running through the team. And in this format, sweeps are extremely important. If you haven't looked at the rules video yet, I can give you a brief description of that. You get rewarded each week based on your win differential. So if I go 6-0 or I go 5-0 with Magearna at any point, that is absolutely huge for me moving forward. So my next pick was Greninja, Ash Greninja. So for those of you guys who don't know, we use Smogon tiers. Ash Greninja is OU legal, and it is amazing. And the nice thing is it knocks out ground and fire types that I might otherwise fear with Magearna. So, looking at his team, he's got a lot of things that should be pretty afraid of this. He's also got some things that can wall it. Like, this doesn't do very well against especially defensive Celesteela that can start setting up subs and leech seeds and stuff like that. But overall, I mean, incredible Pokemon. I love to have a Dark type. There were no Prankster Pokemon drafted. That's definitely noteworthy, but having a Dark type is really good nonetheless, just because I can be immune to Psychic and all that. In fact, Psychic looks really bad against me right now because I also resist with Magearna. Also, Greninja has Water Shuriken, which is now a special move, and is Priority, which is absolutely incredible. Priority is always good in Draft League, especially given that Clutch, my opponent, has Alolan Marowak, which I really am worried about with Magearna. So, great pickup in my opinion. I'm really excited about this. For my third pick, I got Lando. So I don't use Lando very often. I share the same sort of opinion that I think most do, that Lando's kind of a sore in the side of the OU meta. It's way over-centralizing. Now it gets defog. I mean, it can do so many things, though, and I honestly could not pass it up. And getting Intimidates off is nice. Being able to U-turn out is super nice. Now Greninja can U-turn, Lando can U-turn, Magearna can slow Volt Switch. I mean, if I get an Intimidate off and then I slow U-turn into Magearna, Magearna can soak up any special hits with an Assault Vest, and then also I've already intimidated the opposing Pokemon. I can just start firing off Flare Cannons or use, if I'm not Assault Vested, I could use Shift Gear, Calm Mind, Z move. I mean, it synergizes so well with Magearna, and Intimidate is always useful. So my next OU pick, I picked up Tapu Lele. So in a lot of draft leagues, Tapu Lele is illegal, but because we're using Smogon formats for the first season until we do maybe some tier shifts later, Lele is legal, and Lele is amazing because it prevents priority, which means I can run sashes a lot more often, provided I have hazard removal, and I already have Landorus with defog. So kind of covering my bases there. Love to have another fairy type. Fairy hits super strong. Love to have a psychic type, and as you'll see later in my draft, I can use psychic terrain extremely well. Also a great Z user. I'm not sure yet if I'm going to shield tag Lele. I think I'm more likely to shield tag Magearna and Ash Greninja as I get 2 OU shield tags, but maybe Landorus. I don't know. I have a lot of great options, and I have a lot of figuring out to do, but Lele was my next pick. And my last OU pick was Kartana. Again, something else that's banned in a lot of draft league formats. It's banned in our draft league as well. I thought, you know what, I'm not going to have a lot of opportunity to use Lele or Kartana in my draft league competitive format, so I thought, why not use them here? This thing is amazing. It is a great Z user. I have considered, because its usefulness as a Z user is so high, I have considered shield tagging it, but I'm not sure that I will, and I'll get back to that later. Great grass and steel type. It can not take a hit generally. It's pretty frail, but I like to have a fast physical steel type. My opponent, Clutch, has Alolan Ninetales and Kyurem Black, and a Regice, so there's a lot of things on his team that are really concerned about a fast physical steel type that can start. He also has Coco, so and Slurpuff, and so yeah, fairy types and ice types. Really scared of Kartana. For my first UU pick, I took Serperior, and man, I love Serperior. It hits like a truck with Leaf Storm, which is easily walled, I get that, but if I can predict a switch, I get a free Light Clay Reflect or Light Screen, so it's a really good Light Clay user. Again, it's another defogger, which is absolutely huge for me because I can prevent rocks, I can use sashes, I can use Lele's Psychic Terrain to prevent priority, and I can pretty much guarantee a setup or a massive hit on anything. And of course, Serperior just has a lot of usefulness outside of that. It's a great Glare user and all of that. My next pick was Infernape. I absolutely love Infernape. I really wanted another rocker beyond Lando because Lando doesn't usually like to run rocks, but Infernape does. It's a really good suicide lead. It's a really good sash lead with Stealth Rock, something like Close Combat, Flare Blitz. Maybe not with a sash, but you can go Banded. And the nice thing about Infernape in draft format is it's hard to predict because you can go physical or special. So and again, it's another U-turner. So now I have Magearna, Greninja, Lando, and Infernape as Volt Turn core. So I'm really excited about that. And speaking of a Volt Turn core, I next picked up Scizor. Again, Steel types are a priority here. Steel types are very strong. It allows for a very good core with Tapu Lele. I am suffering from a bit of a fire weakness right now. If you look at this point in the draft, I've got Magearna doesn't like fire. Obviously, Scizor doesn't. Kartana hates it, and Serperior doesn't like it either. But I've got Lando to deal with fire types that can't take physical moves. I've got Greninja to deal with fire types that can't take special moves, and I've also got priority on Greninja to guarantee some hits. So I really liked this pick. I thought anytime in draft league format, priority is good, slow turn is good. You can get that Swords Dance sort of Roost combo going. There's a lot of options with Scizor. I think people tend to sort of pigeonhole Scizor sets a little too much by just giving it like U-turn, Roost, Swords Dance, and then, I don't know, something like and Bullet Punch, and then like sometimes running Superpower and stuff like that. There's a lot of options, and you can't really sleep on Scizor in draft format. So I love this next pick. Crobat, awesome Pokemon. 4 times resist fighting type moves, which is not really a necessity on my team right now, but it does work really well with Greninja. It's also immune to ground, which is super helpful. It's another Turner, so I've got 6 out of my 9 Pokemon are Volt Turn Core right now, which is awesome. It's also another Defogger. It can run Toxic, it can run Taunt. I really, really like the bulky Fat Bat sets when I think he's bringing a fighting type. So a lot of options here with Crobat, and I'm really excited to diversify my speed tiers with a little more too. And my last UU pick was Volcanion. I actually picked up Volcanion very, very last pick in the draft. As I mentioned, I was second, so I was last in the draft. And I thought this was a huge pickup for me. It really covers my fire weakness, right, with a quad resistance to fire. And it also works really well with Landorus, because Landorus is immune to ground and immune to electric, right, which are some things that Volcanion really doesn't enjoy. And Volcanion can eat ice type. It's quad resistant to ice, if I'm not mistaken. It's also water absorbed, so it'll take water hits. I mean, it synergizes super well with a lot of my team. I'm really tempted to shield tag this. I'm also really tempted to shield tag a lot of things on my team. I think most likely at this point I will shield tag Volcanion, but no promises on that yet, of course. If you guys don't know, the way that this goes with shield tags is we reveal them at the same time so that we're not trying to play off of each other's shield tags. We want the strategy to be sort of held within the season and not before it. So I actually dipped down for Necrozma in RU pretty early. I think it might have been the 6th or 7th round. I saw, we hadn't gone into RU yet. UU and OU were starting to fill up. Clutch was about to jump down into RU, and I thought, Necrozma is such a big pickup in RU, especially with my Psychic Terrain on Lele. It's another rock user. Very, very defensive. Bulky Psychic types, of course, are always really good in draft. Reliable recovery. If I shield tag this, Z Photon Geyser, especially under Psychic Terrain, is awesome. And the nice thing is this also runs a lot of moves like Signal Beam and stuff like that. So Clutch drafted Mega Absol under Psychic Terrain. It can't use Sucker Punch. And it might be pretty scared of Necrozma otherwise. And it also wouldn't be able to use Knockoff if I'm holding a Z Crystal. So a lot of mind games there. And by the way, Mega Absol's is only Dark type. So if he's not bringing Mega Absol, Z Photon Geyser hits super hard. I think this is a really good way to centralize his team building and to make it more predictable, because he almost has to bring Mega Absol. He almost has to also shield tag Mega Absol if he doesn't want to do a free agency and not take a reward in his next week if he needs a dark type in the future. And to keep with the bulky psychic theme, I picked up Cresselia. I thought this was just a huge value pick in RU. Cresselia is awesome. It's got the levitate ability, so it works well with Magearna, and it can also be very specially bulky or physically bulky. It can soak hits for Magearna really well, and a few other Pokemon on my team. It deals with fighting types really well, so that Greninja is a little more safe to set up and sweep later, or to just be a speedy turner and stuff like that. Again, reliable recovery in Moonlight. I mean, Cresselia does so many different things that having it in draft is super useful, because it's very hard to build around, it's very hard to predict. And sticking with the reliable recovery bulky sets, I picked up P2. Now, in this league, I wanted to pick up things that I honestly never pick up. And Porygon 2 is one of those things. I never use it, but I love it as a Bolt Beamer. Thunderbolt and Ice Beam are awesome. Tri-Attack is good. If you guys have been watching, I don't remember what league it is, but Kyle A, who's a YouTuber that's real fun to watch, has interesting sets. He brought an Agility Trace Porygon 2 that got Beast Boost when it switched it on something. And I thought that was awesome. I want to play around with it. Clutch drafted Cresselia. I think it's his second pick in the draft. And if I switch in with Trace and get a Beast Boost and start throwing Thunderbolts at him, he's going to have a hard time dealing with Porygon 2 while I can reliably recover with an Eviolite. So, a lot of really good options with Porygon 2. It's just a fun Pokemon to play with, and I'm excited for what sort of sets I can come up with. I need an electric type, so I picked up Galvantula. I also, of course, everyone knows, sticky webs are extremely valuable. You kind of force your opponent to get rid of hazards, and the only ways, of course, to get rid of hazards are Rapid Spin and Defog, and his Magic Bouncer in Mega Absol. Mega Absol does not want to come in front of Galvantula because it fears a Bug Buzz. And his only Rapid Spinner is Sarina, which he actually has in draft format right now, and I'm building against in the PCL. Neither of those want to sit in front of a Galvantula. So if I can get up webs with Galvantula reliably, and force him, if he wants to get rid of them, force him to defog and get rid of hazards on my side of the field, then I've got Lele with Psychic Terrain preventing priority, and I can build with a Sash. This was just a good way to synergize with the rest of my team. That's it. And I also, again, love turners. I wanted to go for a turn core, and I've got another Volt Switcher here. My last RU pick was Mandibuzz. Even when I drafted it, Clutch said, that's a UU pick, right? And I said, no. Mandibuzz should be a UU pick, but it's an excellent value pick in RU. It might be S-ranked in RU right now on the viability charts. Really good phaser. I wanted a good phaser, something with Whirlwind. I wanted something, again, that was bulky with reliable recovery, having a Dark type, so that's immune to Psychic, then Flying, it's immune to Ground. Synergizes really well with a few things on my team. Basically, I hate Mandibuzz in that I hate facing it, so I wanted to draft it so that Clutch didn't. And I'm really excited to use it. There's a lot of interesting sets that it can run. I know that it has the other ability that it doesn't normally use that increases its speed, I think. There's just some fun things you can do with it, so I'm super excited about that. So let's get into my Megas. The first Mega I picked up was pretty early in the draft. I got Mega Lopunny. Mega Lopunny is something I don't use very often. It's fighting normal type. It hits pretty hard with Fake Out, which is great. Doesn't work as well with my Psychic Terrain Lele, but if Terrain is gone, then Fake Out is awesome. And great in draft. Anytime you have priority, anytime you can stall a turn, Fake Out, or, that's going to be really useful. Return hits hard. High Jump Kick hits super hard. And you can always go the Power Up Punch Tech and stuff like that. The thing I am worried about with this is he drafted a few things, and I can get into this later. He drafted a few things that sort of forced me to either use Thunder Punch or Ice Punch, when generally you only like to run one of those, right? So it's a little hard to figure out exactly how I'm going to build this, especially early weeks when he's got 18 Pokemon on his roster to use, but we'll see moving forward what I come up with. I'll do some damage calcs, and maybe I don't need one of those anyway. My second Mega pick was Venusaur. Now, again, this is something I don't use very often, but I thought it synergized really well with a few things in my team. It's only worried about flying types and psychic types, and Magearna takes those all day, which is super, super nice. That also works really well with all of my bulky psychic types, which of course can take psychic moves, and Mandibuzz, who's immune to it. And Galvantula knocks out flying and psychic types pretty reliably with both of its stabs, with bug and electric. So I love this pick. I'm excited to use it. I'm honestly not very familiar with it yet. That's why I picked it. I like the idea of toxicking things. I like the idea of maybe setting Sun and using it under that with Synthesis. So there's a lot that I can do with this, and I'm excited to have drafted it. And my last pick then was Mega Manectric. I actually used this in another league once and won the final with it. It was super reliable. Again, like I mentioned with Scizor, I think that people sort of pigeonhole Manectric. It actually has some decent options beyond Volt Switch, Thunderbolt, Flamethrower, and HP something, So I'm super excited to have another Turner again, another Volt Switcher. Super fast, and what I really like about this is it combats Celesteela really well, and it hits, I can get the double Intimidate with Landorus and with Mega Manectric. So double Intimidate, get into something that can set up like Magearna or like Kartana with the Swords Dance, and just start sweeping. So really excited. So that's my team. You guys will notice I did not draft a Dragon. I know that Dragon Fairy Steel Core is very common, but I didn't do it. I just wanted to try a bunch of new things, and I can't reliably keep a dragon on my team anyway, so I guess I felt like, building for cores, unless you know going into the draft exactly what you're going to shield tag and exactly what you're going to get, building for cores in this sort of format is very difficult because anything could be knocked out at any time that you haven't tagged. I just got a lot of Pokemon that combat his team, and that synergize well enough, And I could have mentioned this earlier. One thing that I did not think about during the draft, but I've realized now, just from a strategy standpoint, is getting Necrozma and Cresselia is very interesting, right? So 2 RU Pokemon, bulky psychic types, reliable recovery, kind of similar niches. And even during the draft, I said this might be a little redundant. But I'm realizing more and more that redundancy is actually very useful. And the reason is this. I can shield tag, say, Necrozma, right, or Cresselia. And if he gets a 4-0 differential, the reward for that is forcing me, at my choice, forcing me to shift a shield tag. Well, then I can just shift Cresselia to Necrozma, and my synergy within my team doesn't change at all. I lose a Levitator, but I gain a Stealth Rocker, So there's some small differences, but both bulky psychic types both fulfill a role that I definitely want on my final 6, on the parts of my roster that are shield tagged. So very, very interesting. We're learning the strategy as we go here. So now let's get into Clutch's team. So the first pick in the draft overall, Clutch took Mew. I love Mew. Mew is super, super fun to build with, extremely diverse. Obviously, it gets like almost every move. I've seen it used in a lot of different ways. Defensive Mew is pretty common. Unfortunately for him, I did take Megalopony, which does force Mew into a bit of a more defensive role if he wants to bring it. Stealth Rocks is always an option. But I've seen Mew run with stuff like Flame Charge and Earthquake, and I think it can get Zen Headbutt. I think it might also get Trick Room, which, if you look at his team later, we might mention it again. It's super useful. So his second pick was Celesteela. I've tried using Celesteela many times to no avail. I'm just bad with Celesteela, honestly. It has very high middling stats, low 100s for like 4 or 5 of its stats, which makes it really good in draft because it's hard to pin down. Is it a physical attacker, special attacker? Is it a physical wall? Is it a special wall? It does well at all of those things, and then Beast Boost makes it even scarier. So, it can do Sub-Seed, it can run physical with things like, I think it gets Earthquake, it gets Seed Bomb, it can run special, I'm pretty sure it gets Flamethrower, Air Slash. It has so many options. It is very hard to build for. Honestly, I drafted Mega Manectric just because of this thing. I drafted Galvantula because of this thing. It's scary. I think, luckily, with all of my Volt Turn, it's not going to be able to reliably sit in front of my team. It's going to have to be a little more, quick to attack, but we'll see what he does with it. He's got a lot of things that synergize really well with it. One of those being Tapu Koko. So Tapu Koko, was sitting there at, I think he took this, 5th in the draft overall. If he didn't take it, I was going to take it, and then I took Landorus. Really good Volt Switcher, of course. That's the theme of my team. Really, really hard to predict because it can run physical, it can run special, it can even run mixed. Nature's Madness breaks through a lot of walls pretty reliably. I have a feeling he's probably going to shield tag this because it's an extremely reliable Z user. Wild Charge or Thunderbolt, Electrium Z under electric terrain just hits so hard. And I always have to bring a ground type or something with Volt Absorb, which I actually don't have, if I want to work around Tapu Koko each week. So really, really terrifying Pokemon. Pretty good pickup. His next pickup was Alolan Ninetales. I love Alolan Ninetales. I think that I believe in the hype. It's super frail. You like to run it with a Sash. I think that that's going to benefit him because he can run it with a Sash while Lele Psychic Terrain is up. Aurora Veil is terrifying. It's not as terrifying considering the fact that I have 5 Defoggers on my team, And as I mentioned earlier, I kind of force him into defogging if he wants to remove hazards. So, I'm not as scared about it, but, Blizzards under Hail from this thing hit so hard. And I do have some Pokemon that really don't want to deal with that. So, Bullet Punch Scissor is going to be helpful. Magearna pretty much walls this thing 100%, though I have seen some interesting sets with Alolan Ninetales. I'm really excited to see what he does with it. And it looks like he's trying to synergize a little bit here with Kieran Black. I'm pretty sure Kieran Black runs Blizzard, can run special sets. I know it generally runs both physical special with like a Freeze Shock, like Icium Z Freeze Shock. I wouldn't be surprised if he wants to Shield Tag this to use Z Crystals, and Bolt Strike, and then it likes to run Earth Power. I mean, it's got a lot of different options. It doesn't generally choice itself, so it's probably not going to be Sash or Bandit on any particular match. But if he doesn't Shield Tag it and he's not using a Z Crystal, he's probably stuck with something like an Expert Belt or a Life Orb or I guess a Sash, but this thing takes hits pretty well. So interested to see what he does with this, see if he brings it with Ninetales, to see how it synergizes with the rest of his team. And now here he's completed a Steel Dragon Fairy Core. Really, really strong. I mean, Celesteela, Kieran Black, and Tapu Koko as a Fairy Dragon Steel Core is just incredible. So really excited to see what he does with those. Next, he picked up Gliscor. So that was his first UU pick pretty early in the draft. Gliscor works super well with Tapu Koko. Gliscor does force my Mega Manectric to use HP Ice. It almost always run HP Ice, or my Galvantula to always run HP Ice, or something to run an Ice-type move, right? I do have Magearna that can run Ice Beam. Of course, I've got Greninja, which takes this thing out, but he's got some answers for Greninja now and later in the draft. So really interesting here. Can run Swords Dance, can run Stealth Rock, of course. Pretty sure it can get Defog. It roosts up with that Toxic Orb, Toxic Heal combo. Can stall out with just a Toxic set generally. Really, really interesting Pokemon. Super excited to see what he does with it. And another staller here is Suicune, the classic Crocoon set. It's going to be a little bit harder for him to run a classic Crocoon set with Rest, Calm Mind, Sleep Talk, and Scald, because I have Volcanion sitting there who can take water moves all day, right? So if he runs Crocoon, I just bring Volcanion in, and it can't do anything to me but heal me. So not as great for him on that front, but it's super bulky. It's very hard to deal with. Luckily, I have Mega Manectric to move past this thing, but if it gets a few Calm Minds up, I'm actually in a lot of trouble. So interested to see what he does with that as well. And he got Breloom. This is like Mandibuzz I mentioned earlier. I hate Breloom because I love Breloom. I love using it. I hate facing it. We do have a Sleep Clause, so we can only put one thing to sleep at a time with Spore. Spore, Swords Dance, and Mach Punch and Bullet Seed. Super common set. He can run Sub, Leech Seed as well if he wants to. Be a little cheeky with it. It's just a scary Pokemon. I don't have any Ghost types on my team, so a Fighting type is a little concerning. And a lot of, and Greninja doesn't like a Mach Punch. A lot of things on my team just actually don't generally take Fighting type moves. So, other than my bulky Psychic types, which is why I picked those up. So, interested to see what he does with this. I do have a few direct counters. Mega Venusaur is easily the best Mega counter for this thing. It can't get put to sleep. Responds with a huge Sludge Bomb or something like it. And I have Crobat as well, which the nice thing about Crobat is it comes in and it threatens both flying type moves and poison. So it threatens a Brave Bird and a Cross Poison or something like that. And it threatens a U-turn. So it's hard for him to switch out and predict which move I'm going to use because they're both super effective. Or I could just get Momentum. So I have a few good options there, but it's still a very scary Pokemon. Next, he got Gengar. I don't know if I've just not been paying attention, but I'm honestly surprised Gengar is UU. I know it got nerfed this gen in Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon because it lost, or I guess in Sun and Moon, because it lost the Levitate ability. But now it can pick up Toxic Spikes. So, it's more of a detriment than a benefit, to be honest, because it does love that immunity to ground, being a poison type. But really, really good Pokemon for him. I do have normal types that can take Shadow Balls. I'm not remembering right now if Scrappy allows Ghost types to hit me. So I'm not sure how Mega Lopunny would work if he wants to sash this thing and then respond. But either way, I mean, this is a great pickup. It's just a really fast Shadow Ball, Sludge Bomb user. Any fairies on my team, I don't have Ghost types, but any fairy types on my team, and my bulky Psychic types are really going to be scared of this Gengar. I mean, I can't sit there and Calm Mind with Cresselia with a Gengar in front of me. Necrozma is going to be a little easier to work with just because of the Prism Armor ability, but still really scary, this Pokemon here. And probably, for me, one of the scariest Pokemon that he picked up for my team is Alolan Marowak. So this thing hits like a truck, and if he ever decides to run Trick Room with a lot of the Pokemon on his team that are relatively slow, he's got pretty diverse speed tiers here. This thing runs super well under it. Flare Blitz is huge. I know it runs stuff like Knockoff. It gets Earthquake. Shadow Bone is phenomenal, especially when it's holding things like the Thick Club. So, and this thing can also just predict a switch and go for Will-O-Wisp. So, you know, and if I set up screens with Serperior, this thing comes in pretty reliably, scares me out, and uses Brick Break. So there's a lot of options he has for this thing here. And of course, like I said, my bulky Psychic types don't want to deal with his hard-hitting Ghost types. This next pick was his first RU pick. He got Gigalith. He told me he wanted to play a little bit with weather. He wanted to use Sandstream. I'm pretty sure this thing also gets Sturdy. I'm sure it gets Explosion. That's terrifying, given that I have no Ghost types on my team. So, it forces me to run Protective. I think he's going to do that. Luckily, Custap Berry is illegal because it's not released on Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon, so he can't do anything like that. Plus, I do have a multi-hit special move in Water Shuriken on Greninja, so Sturdy isn't going to be as useful, but he said he wants to run Sandstream, so it's going to give him a special defense boost, and it actually works super well with his next pick, which is Stoutland, which actually gets the Sand Rush ability, if I'm not mistaken. This thing hits super hard with Return. I know it gets Play Rough, Crunch, Wild Charge. That's actually a pretty common set. Give it something like an Expert Belt or give it a Choice Band. He can... My mistake not taking a Ghost type, because he can set up the Sandstream and then Choice Band Stoutland, have, double speed under Sand Rush, and just hit Return, or Double Edge, or something like that, and just hit everything very hard on my team. I do have stuff like Magearna that can take a normal type and resist it, but still, this thing is super scary, and it forces me to build around it. His next RU pick was Slurpuff. This is basically like his RU Hawlucha, because he's got Coco, and if you don't know, like, Hawlucha likes to come in on electric terrain, use Electric Seed. It has the ability Unburden, so it's super fast, and then it can just start hitting really hard, right? Slurpuff can do the same thing. It's got Unburden. It can use an Electric Seed. It can also use something like a red card. And if you use a red card, then it can get a speed boost and maybe use a Calm Mind in the interim. It can also go the Belly Drum tech. He can use this as his RU shield tag and use a Z Belly Drum to recover all of his HP. And this thing's coverage is just phenomenal. I'm pretty sure it gets like Flamethrower and Surf and a lot of different moves. Of course, it gets like, Play Rough and stuff like that. So, really interesting. I'm excited to see what he does with it because it's a pretty diverse mon. His next pick he actually has in the PCL draft, and I'm building against it for the finals right now. That's Sarina. So Sarina, interesting Sun and Moon Pokemon. Trop Kick is its signature move, which is a Grass type physical move that lowers your attack stat. It might actually might harshly lower your attack stat. I'm not actually sure. I haven't faced it too much. It's a good band user. Again, it gets Rapid Spin, and I have no Ghost type, so I can't prevent Rapid Spin. Gengar would have been a really good pickup to work against this, as it resists Trop Kick and it prevents Rapid Spin, but he picked it up, so I didn't have the opportunity. Really, really interesting pickup, and I'm excited to see what he does with it, because honestly, I'm not super familiar with it yet. And his last RU pickup was a Regice. So Regice is specially bulky ice type. Ice does not have the best resistances. It's not the best defensive typing. But there's a lot that he can do with this. One thing I'm super worried about, I haven't looked it up yet, but I'm pretty sure it gets, is it Mirror Coat? No, is it, it's the move that I've used it with Tentacruel a lot in an Assault Vest, and he can run an Assault Vest with it, where it tanks a special hit and responds with double. It's basically the other counter. I think it might be Mirror Coat. I'm pretty sure Regice gets that. It gets a lot of other things too that are pretty scary to deal with. And it works really well under Hail, because if I'm not mistaken, I think it has an ability that works, allows it to work really well with Hail. So, really excited about this team. Now we're going to jump into Clutch's Megas. The first Mega he picked up, I mentioned before, is Mega Absol. I had to build a lot around this when I was drafting. It's really good with like Swords Dance, Sucker Punch, Knockoff, and Play Rough. But it can also run special, so it can run mixed, right? With Fire Blast for Kartana and Scizor on my team, or Ice Beam with Landorus. A nice thing to note is he's kind of forced to use one of those, right? So he probably won't bring Play Rough because I have so many different things that resist it, and the things that don't resist it and are weak to it, like Lopunny, he doesn't want to bring Absol in against Lopunny. So he's forced to bring Fire Blast or Ice Beam in that move slot because of Landorus and Scizor. Scizor can reliably U-turn on it. Landorus can reliably U-turn on it. So I tried to cut down its usefulness a lot. Interested to see if he shield tags this or one of his other two Megas. We're going to see, you know, in the next few days here. And I also drafted Tapu Lele to combat this. He can't use Sucker Punch under Psychic Terrain, and I can throw off just a nasty Moonblast if he switches into Celesteela. Then I've got a lot of answers for that, and Mega Manectric and things. So just sort of trying to think of the strategy now, and this is a scary pick, so I had to work around it. He said this was a dangerous pick when he picked it up, and I can understand why. In Draft League format, rocks are super useful and very common. So, you know, the hard thing is you switch in Charizard, you take half damage to rocks immediately. And I have Mega Charizard X in the PCL League right now, and that's always a concern of mine. I had to draft several Defoggers and Rapid Spinners at the beginning of the season to prevent rocks. They're just, it happens, you know? This is forcing me, though, to bring a rocker most weeks, which is why, you know, Necrozma, Landorus, Infernape. I mean, it picked up a lot of things that can use Stealth Rock for this purpose, just in case he drafted something that was very weak to it. So, but this thing hits super hard. I'm not sure how he's going to work around the Sandstream and Drought abilities, kind of having both in Weather Wars here, but Solar Beam hits super hard and threatens out a lot of things on my team. This thing's got a pretty good speed in a pretty good speed tier. Of course, Fire Blast is going to always hit super hard. Things like Dragon Pulse. So I'm really excited to see what he does with this. I'm not sure how much it synergizes with other things in his team, and it is relatively, it's kind of frail, just because it is 4 times weakness to Rock. But yeah, excited to see what he does with that. And his last Mega is one of my favorites, being a really, like, I love bug type Pokemon. Mega Beedrill. Mega Beedrill is awesome. It's a little non-diverse. Versatility is not very high, but you know, it gets classic U-turner. It's very fast, so it can scout very early as a U-turner. It gets you can do the Fell Stinger tech and increase your attack. You already outspeed most things on the field, barring any Scarfers and barring any Sashes. You can kind of start sweeping through the team. Poison is a really good attacking typing now that Fairy is a thing. And this thing gets knockoff too, and that's really scary because, you know, you have to, when he's got 2 Megas that use knockoff pretty reliably and in almost every standard set. So it's pretty scary to face knockoff all the time because you have to be really wary about what items then you're bringing each week. So this is Clutch's team. I'm into it. I love it. There's a lot of Pokemon here that I'm unfamiliar with that I'm gonna definitely have to learn throughout the PKD here. So that's it. That's my analysis, you guys. Let me know in the comments below who you think had a better draft and why. Let me know if you have any suggestions on free agencies. Do check the rules, though, because there are detriments to doing any free agency transactions. Generally speaking, these are the teams week 1, or these are the rosters week 1, and we're going to each lose a Pokemon each week. So thanks for watching, guys. I hope you're excited for the season, and I will catch you later. Peace.